Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Rami Jurado. I'm an attorney here in South Florida. The name of my firm is Jurado and Associates, and we are a firm that does a couple of different areas of law. We cover real estate, we cover probate all over the state of Florida, immigration all over the United States. We do registered trademarks, copyrights. We also do litigation, from the transactions that arise from real estate disputes to regular commercial disputes. And of course, immigration, which is one of the topics that I'm going to discuss today. I like to make my presentations interactive, so please, by all means, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat, or you can ask them. I think there's also a Q&A, so that we can address all your questions. Right now, I'm going to proceed and share my screen, and I will send everybody a link to later on a follow-up email with the presentation, and also hopefully a link to this recorded webinar if it does record nicely. Give me just 1 second and I'll go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Okay, I think everybody can see my screen there. Again, my name is Rami Jurado. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for over 11 years now. Time flies by, and I deal a lot with what I'm going to talk to you guys about today, which is investment visas and real estate. In the state of Florida, as we know, we always get an influx of foreigners, so we always have to be alert on that. The 3 different visas that we have available for investors in the real estate arena are the L1 visa, the E2 visa, and the EB5 visa. The L1 visa and the EB5 visa are the ones that can lead to residency. The E2, there's no straight direct path, but there are ways to convert it, or because you're here on an E2, there's a way to apply for a residency, and I'll explain that in a minute. So first, we want to know why. Why, as realtors, you guys would be interested in knowing about investment visas? How can this help your business? Well, of course, everybody that's going to come here to start a business, right, for immigration purposes, they're going to need workspace. And that workspace can be an office, can be a warehouse, can be, what else do we have? A store, a restaurant. They're going to need workspace. And for immigration purposes, it cannot be a virtual office. They don't really like that. They want to see that you have a physical location, physical premises. So in my experience, realtors are able to assist their clients in finding that workspace. And a lot of times they want to buy that workspace. You know, let's say they're opening up a consulting business. So for a consulting business, there's not really as much investment required, because I mean, you only need a couple of computers and that's it. So my recommendation to the clients is, okay, why don't you buy the office? So that way, that money that you pay for the office, that's going to count towards investment. So then we do have that. So clients will need workspace. Now, if the client doesn't want to buy the space, you can still assist them. I have a lot of clients that want to start a restaurant, so they need to lease a commercial premise, or they want to start a store, or they want to start a car wash business, or they want to start any business. For any business, they're going to need workspace, and you guys as realtors can help them either buy the location or rent the location. And in my firm, we do help a lot with commercial leases. We review them, send them emails, explain it to the client so they know what they're getting themselves into, and we help negotiate as well. So first up right there, you need to find them a commercial place to either, buy or to rent. Also, clients will need a place to live. In my experience, when they're thinking about an investment visa, they come in, they find a location. It's probably going to be a temporary location where they're going to be living with their kids and their family. And then as soon as they get their investment visa approved, now they want to buy a house. A lot of foreigners from abroad, they don't want to be, in the United States renting a house or renting an apartment for a long time. They want to actually own it. So first, you as realtors help them find that place to rent temporarily, and then you help them buy wherever they're going to live with their family. So there again, you as realtors are making your money, making your commission, because they need to find a place to live. Also, clients may start a business that specializes in real estate and buying and selling real estate. Now, I know that there is a lot of confusion out there, because I know clients come to me, realtors come to me, and they tell me, no, Romy, the attorney for immigration told us that we couldn't use real estate for an investment visa. And that's not correct. So I'll tell you about real examples I have done with clients and have led to an investment visa with real estate. For example, I have a lot of clients that like to buy shopping plazas. So their business is buying and managing a shopping plaza, and they can get an E2 visa for that, or an L1 visa for that, or they want to build a shopping plaza. Then maybe we can get an EB5 visa for that. A lot of clients want to buy empty lots, empty locations to build out, start a construction company. Maybe they buy a piece of land in Naples and they want to start constructing. That itself can be a business, right? They don't have to have the contractor license. They can hire all those services out, create jobs, and then that way that helps their investment visa application. So you can buy an existing shopping plaza and you can use that for a visa. You can buy a vacant lot, constructed, and you have a construction company, you can use that for a visa. You can buy a couple of multifamilies. I have clients that really like multifamilies. They buy like 6 or 7, and their business is managing those multifamilies. That's okay too. You can buy a building, an office building, and your business is managing that office building. That's okay too. I have a client that bought timeshares, and his business was managing those timeshares. That's a business too. Let's see, what else do we have? Buying one single family house is not going to do it, but buying a couple of them, by starting a property management business, that can work. Clients can also start a real estate brokerage. You know, a lot of times clients come in and they're like, Romy, we wanted to do a real estate brokerage. Yes, you can. We can open up the company for you. We can help you get the license and permits for a real estate brokerage. You will need to hire a brokerage to qualify your real estate business. And then there you have it. You are a real estate brokerage and you can do all of that and obtain your investment visa and eventually your residency through EB-5. I have a couple of actually brokers that I'm actually friends with because I represented them in starting their business here, and now they're residents and eventually citizens. Also, you guys as realtors, so I already explained that you can do this all in real estate. We can come up with any creative mechanisms so that the business, the real estate business, is an actually ongoing business. It's not passive, it's active, creates jobs, the requirement of jobs depending on the visa, and then they could obtain the residency or just a visa or citizenship depending on what is it that they want. Also, another thing to consider as realtors is that you can help people buy a business, right? So if you look in the MLS, they have, I think it's business opportunities listings. If you look in the buy or sell website, you as realtors can earn commission for helping somebody buy a business. So in my firm, we do a lot of business transactions, a lot of business closings. And the way that it works is basically the realtor finds them a business that the client wants to buy. The client, we draft a contract, because you won't find form contracts for this. We draft a contract, we receive the deposit. There is a period of due diligence, right? So during that period, we do the legal due diligence, the CPA, AKA my husband, does the financial due diligence. And then we come to the closing table, right? All of the debts, everything that needed to be paid has been paid. We do a regular closing. There is no title insurance or any of that. There's no deed to record because it's not a house, but there are documents to be drafted, to be signed. And that's why due diligence is so important, because there is no title insurance that protects the purchase. And then the client becomes a new owner of that business. And then you as agents can receive commission from that too. So all of those reasons are why, as realtors, you guys should be interested in learning about investment visas, because it's gonna broaden up your opportunities to have more clients. Awesome. So first we have the L1 visa. The L1 visa is actually a really interesting visa because it does lead to residency. There is no restriction as to what country you're from. You can be from any country, right? And you can apply for an L1 visa. And the requirements are that basically, well, except a couple of restrictions that I think were enacted, but you know, the other countries, like we know that they have bans again. So nowhere that we have an embargo, we cannot do a business with those countries, so they cannot apply for an L1 visa. But for example, we can do an L1 visa for people from Venezuela so far. It hasn't changed yet. And I've actually done a bunch of them actually. And the requirement is as follows, that there is a business abroad, okay? And that business has been in existence, I would say, for at least 1 or 2 years. That business desires to open up a subsidiary, related company in the United States. The business abroad, I like to see it with at least 8 employees on payroll. I like to see that the business abroad is an existing business, has all the licenses and permits required to basically do that type of business, has employees on payroll, has adequate business premises, either via a lease or their own where they're operating. All of that we like to see. And then that business, it's going to be able to send an executive or many executives, depending on the size of the business, to the United States to open up a subsidiary to expand the business to the United States. So who can they send? They can send either a manager or an executive or somebody with specialized knowledge. And I'll discuss in a minute what that means. So they can send those either an executive, a manager, or somebody with specialized knowledge to the United States to start the business, to expand their foreign business. And one of the main requirements is that this person that they send must have worked for the company abroad for 1 year out of the past 3 years. How do we show that? Very easy, payroll. We need to show payroll records that this person has worked for 1 year out of the past 3 years in the company abroad. And then we're able to send them to the United States. In the United States, okay, we will be setting up a US company, right? I'll probably if they're coming to Florida, I'll form a Florida company, depending when they're coming. We'll set up the company, draft the corporate documents, obtain a tax ID, all that good stuff. And then they will go and open up the business bank account. And then the foreign company will deposit in that business bank account the money that they're going to use to either buy an existing business or to start a business. So first step is we set up a US company. Second step is they open up the bank account. Third step is the foreign company sends in the money of the investment. And now we identify who is it that we want to send to the United States. And in the United States, we also want to show that the company in the United States has the ability to host either that manager, that executive, or that somebody with specialized knowledge. How do we show that? Immigration likes to see the creation of employment. So when we send our L1 visas, we have extremely high approval rate for all of our visas, and that's because we're very picky. We want to show immigration that the US company has created jobs. I would like to say at least 8 jobs, half of them, with professional degrees. They don't have to be US bachelors, they can be foreign bachelors. But we want to show that the company in the United States has created jobs, has a location that is so important, has to have a location, has to have all of the licenses and permits required for that location. What do I mean by that? All businesses require licenses, right? Even if you're selling papers, you require a license. You require a license from the city, you require a license from the county, and depending on the type of business, you may require a license from the state. You may require a federal license. I don't know, because it depends on your type of business. We do that too here at Hudal & Associates. We get all types of licenses for all types of regulated and simple businesses, because it's so important to get the right licenses. So once we have the US company with the licenses, once we have the jobs created, once we have the information from abroad, during all this time, a business plan is being prepared, because we have to show immigration that you're going to do a good business here with financial projections for 5 years. Who prepares the business plan? I don't. The CPA does. The CPA will prepare a good, realistic business plan. They will also say that it was prepared by a CPA, so immigration likes that too, because they're certified licensed professionals who just won't write anything, right? We want something realistic. So the business plan will get prepared. Now we have the business plan. Now we have all the documentation from the foreign company. We have all the documentation from the US company. Now we're able to apply for an L1 visa. Now I said that you needed to be an executive, a manager, or employee with specialized knowledge. And I'm gonna go into more detail as to what that is. Okay, somebody's asking me here, can local employees be foreigners? No, United States wants to see that you're creating US jobs. So what does that mean? When we're applying for an L1 visa, we want to see employees in Florida, maybe even other states, but in payroll of the United States. Foreign employees will not count towards that requirement. I see people raising their hands, but I don't know how to. If you guys want to put the question in the chat or in the Q&A, then I can answer it. Okay, or I don't know how to allow people to make questions live. Sorry. Okay, going back to the L1 visa, the employee must have the employer must have secure sufficient physical premises to house the new office. That is very important. For an L1 visa, no virtual office, no home office, we need an actual premise. The employee was employed, whoever we're gonna send here, was employed as an executive, a manager, or somebody with specialized knowledge for at least 1 year prior to coming to the United States. So for immigration, an executive is somebody that supervises other professionals, okay? So how do we show this person's an executive? Of course, their degrees of education, their years of experience, but we show that they supervise other professionals. A manager can be somebody that manages a specialized function. For example, they manage the marketing function, they manage the sales function, they manage the HR function, human resources, and we can show it as well like that. Somebody with specialized knowledge, we want to send somebody like that. It's somebody that knows something so well that we need them to open up the business in the United States. I don't like to do somebody with specialized knowledge, because then that means I have to do the same business that we did abroad here. And a lot of times that's not going to be the case. So that's one interesting thing about the L1 visa. While I'm telling you that we need to set up a US company that's related to the foreign company, it doesn't have to be in the same industry at all. For example, abroad, you could have had and actually this has happened to us, you could have had a law firm, you ran a law firm, but in the United States, you decided to open up a daycare, no problem. Abroad, you had a factory for shoes, but in the United States, you decided to open a chain of restaurants. Absolutely no problem. As long as we show the corporate relationship, which is something that I will show when I create the US company. Let's see, I have a couple more questions. You guys don't have to hold the questions till the end. You can ask them as you go. So feel free to write them out and I'll answer them. Somebody else is asking me, can a person in the US on a tourist visa who wants to change their status to buy or to start or buy a business, can they do that while in their US already? Yes, absolutely. And we do it all the time. So let's say that we have somebody that came in on a tourist visa, and 3 months in, they're like, OMG, this country is amazing. I want to be able to stay here legally. What can I do? An investment visa. So then we hurry up, you find in the business, we set up the US company, we do the closing, and we send everything to immigration. It's called a change of status, okay? So in the United States, we can only change status. We don't get visas, but we change status. Abroad, you get a visa. But that's okay. We can apply within the United States to do a change of status. So if they're here on a tourist visa, it would be from B1, B2 to L1, okay? And we can do that for their spouse, legally married, of course, and their children under 21. So they all can change status. So what does that mean? That they're allowed to stay here legally. They'll get their social, the spouse, all of that, but they cannot leave the country, because the moment that they leave, they lose that status. So while you can change status while being here in a B1 visa, B1 status, it doesn't allow you to come in and out. The only thing that allows you to come in and out is an actual visa, which you need to apply for at a US embassy abroad. But you could come in on a tourist visa and then change status. No problem. We do it all the time. Okay. For the L1 visa, for all the visas, but especially for the L1 visa, the business plan is a key component, because the business plan is going to talk about the foreign business and about this person that you're trying to send and why they're so important, and about the future that the business has here in the United States. That is why I like to work with a CPA, because he will put realistic things in it, so that when immigration sees it, it's not some crazy numbers. I'm going to hire 20 people. I'm going to expand all over the country. You know, we don't want to put something that's not realistic. It has to make sense. Also, what the business generates, and this is so important and key, what the business generates has to be enough to cover the employees and the person that's coming here to work. Mathematically, it has to make sense. So a lot of people ask me, Romy, can my client buy a business that's not doing so well and use it for a visa? Another attorney told me it's not possible. That's not correct, okay? Because your client can buy a business that's doing bad for an L1 visa. Because what is your client going to do? They're going to put in investment, right? So let's say, and actually I've had this example, a client of mine bought a coin laundry for $150,000. The business was not doing so well, but he invested money in marketing. He invested money in new equipment. He invested more money. So for immigration purposes, his investment amount was not just the 150, it was like 250, because he invested that in marketing and in equipment. And that's why his financial projections made sense. While the previous business was losing money, his business, according to the financial projections, was making more money because of the investment that brought in more business, right? I remember that when he actually went around, hired salespeople that would go and introduce themselves to the hotels, and that way they would get more business from the hotels, which the previous business owner was not doing, and that really increased his business. So you could buy a business that's not doing so well, okay? And as long as we justify it via the business plan, we're investing money, we're creating these jobs, we're gonna have new marketing, then it will make sense that the business is actually gonna make more money now that your client has bought it. So it's not true that you cannot buy, that you need to look at the previous tax returns in order to buy it for an investment visa. You could look at the previous tax returns, but you also have to look at what is your client gonna do with it, okay? A lot of times people ask me, Romy, which is the best business for me to do, right? And that's not a question I can answer, because I have seen the same type of business being bought by two different people, and one does really well and one doesn't do so well. So what I tell my clients is all the time is you need to do your due diligence, your own due diligence. You need to go see how the market is for that business. I'll do the legal due diligence, but you need to go see how the movement is, how much time of yours is required. You need to think of marketing. Nowadays, everything is marketing. If you're not marketing yourself, then you're not going to get business. So I always tell them it's up to you what business works for you and how much work you're willing to put into it to see if it's gonna, give you the money that you need to basically live in the United States. Because while I can get them the visa for the first year or for the first 5 years, if it's an E2 visa, if the business doesn't do well, they're not gonna be able to renew it. So that is why it's so important that the clients understand it's not just the type of business, it's how the client is gonna, develop that business, how much involvement that they're gonna have. Are they gonna hire the right people? And we, through our firm, we can help them with, doing the legal due diligence, as I mentioned. Also, we can advise them, serve as outside general counsel so that anything down the road, any questions, we're always there to help. And then the CPA can assist in all of the accounting and the taxes to kind of help this foreigner who basically is new to this, kind of swim through this new world that is doing business in the United States and in Florida in a more successful way. So that is something that we're able to do. It's not just selling them the business, getting them the visa, bye. Is giving them this basically encouragement and support, legal and financial, throughout their time here so that when it's time to renew, they're not going to have an issue. Somebody's asking me another question. If after 3 years the new business falls, does the investor lose the visa? They will not be able to renew the visa. And if they sell the business or they close the business, they're required to notify immigration. So yes, that's why it's so important to, once they get the investment visa, to be able to maintain the business. However, with the L1 visa, okay, let me explain you the timeline, because maybe after 3 years, he might already be a resident. So then we don't care about the business anymore. With the L1 visa, you get it for 1 year, okay? If you do change of status, it's more. But if you do it abroad, you get the visa for 1 year. Then we can renew for an additional 2 years, okay? So we renew the visa for an additional 2 years. As soon as we get the renewal, so maybe after the first year, we can apply for residency, green card. It's called EB1. So that means that I don't need to wait for the second renewal, for the first renewal. I just need to wait that you have worked in the United States for 1 year, because the requirement for the residency is as follows. You work for 1 year out of the past 3 years in the company abroad, and then you for 1 full year in the company here that's related to the company abroad. So if we can show that, we can apply for residency, and you might be a resident within 3 years from the time you started all of this. So to the person that asked me if after 3 years a new business fails, does the investor lose the visa? Maybe not, because maybe within the first 3 years, he's already a resident or she's already a resident. And then after that, you can sell the business, you can give it away, because now you're a green card holder, a permanent green card holder with no restrictions. You started with an L1 visa, then you got your EB1, which is residency, and everybody's happy. If you don't want to apply for residency, if the client doesn't want to apply for residency, then they can keep on renewing the L1. But the maximum amount of time that they're going to be here in an L1 is 7 years. Okay. And that's something to keep in mind. It's going to be 7 years. So that's the L1 visa. It's actually a really cool visa. I have helped through with my team. Many people start with the L1 and now they're residents, and now we're even doing their citizenship. So it's a really nice visa to have. What do you need? A company abroad. You need a company abroad to be fully operational. Then you need to set up one up here. And during the time that you're here, you need to make sure that the company abroad is still operating. And then eventually you can apply for a green card. And once you obtain that green card, you can do whatever you want with the company abroad and the company here. The L1 visa is going to cover you, your spouse, and your children under 21. So it's actually pretty cool. Even if you have 5 children, it doesn't matter. Okay, somebody wants me to repeat when you can apply for residency. This is when you can apply for residency. Let's say that you obtain an L1, right? Then you need to have worked here in the United States for 1 year. After you have worked here for 1 full year, that is when we can apply for residency. Okay, so after you obtain your L1 and you're working here for 1 year, that is when we can apply for residency. Not before, because the requirements for residency is that you have worked for 1 year out of the past 3 years abroad, then that you came here, and that here you worked for 1 full year. So after 1 full year is when we can apply for residency via L1 EB1 visa. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about the E2 visa. The E2 visa is a treaty visa. It's a non-immigrant visa. And here we do have certain requirements because in order for you to apply for an E2 visa, your country has to be one that has a treaty with the United States, okay? A navigational treaty, commerce treaty, a treaty when we can tell you whether your country qualifies or not. New countries that are gonna be able to apply for E2 are, for example, it's Portugal. Actually, I was recently there, fabulous country. And now they are gonna be qualified to apply for E2 visas. Let's see, Israel recently also was able to apply for E2 visa. So yes, they have E2 visa available. A lot of the European countries have the E2 visa available to them. A lot of the Central American countries such as Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras has the E2 visa available to them. South American countries, they do too. Colombia, Argentina, Chile, all of those have the E2 visas available to them. Let me see here. So the key thing is first to see, does your country, the country that you're from, does it qualify you for an E2 visa because of your nationality? And if it does, then we can apply for an E2 visa. So the first requirement is the alien, the person must be one, a national of the treaty country. Then immigration says the investment has to be of a substantial amount. What is that? In my opinion, the substantial amount means the money required to do the business. So if you're gonna open up a little cafeteria, $100,000, it's enough for a little cafeteria. That's substantial amount because that's what your business requires. If you're gonna open up a 5-star restaurant, then maybe $500,000 would be enough. I don't know, depends where your 5-star restaurant is. If you're gonna open up a little kiosk inside of a food hall, right? We are doing those too. Then maybe $80,000 is enough. Whatever is enough to do the type of business that you're gonna be doing, that's what the foreigner needs to invest, okay? Now, the foreigner can have other investors, no problem, but they need to own at least 50% of the business. In my experience, my recommendation, they should own at least 51%, because if they own 50%, we still have to show that they are the ones that manage and direct the enterprise. So I like to do 51%, but by all means, 50% is enough, okay? So requirements. Person has to be of a national treaty country, a country that has a treaty with the United States that gives them the E2 visa. Only the investor has to have it. If their spouse and their kids don't have it, no problem. They're all gonna be included. The money has to be a substantial amount. So if you're doing a small cafeteria, $100,000 is enough. If you're doing a coin laundry, maybe 150. If you're buying an existing business, then it's whatever the business costs. That's the amount that has to be invested from your funds. You could receive a loan. You can receive a gift also, but you cannot secure that loan in the business itself. Okay, so no, you cannot go to the bank, get a loan and secure it in the business. That will not work. But you can go to the bank, get a loan, secure it on your house, secure it on your personal assets, no problem. The investor, the person coming in, has to be managing the business and has to be involved in the business, and they should own at least 50%. Let's see, I have other questions. Morocco, does Morocco have E2? That's something I would have to look at in my list of countries. I have never done an E2 for Moroccan citizens, so I couldn't tell you that from my head, but we can look it up. And in my follow-up email, I will send you guys a link that shows you all the countries that have E2 treaties. Okay, substantial amount, again, is the cost of investment compared to the total cost. The investment must be large enough to ensure the treaty investor's financial commitment, right? And the investment must be likely, it needs to make it likely that the business is gonna succeed. How do we show that? Business plan. Again, here we're gonna show immigration a business plan with 5-year projections, talking about the investor, talking about their business, all prepared by the CPA because I want realistic numbers. I want it to make sense. And then we're gonna present that to immigration. So for this type of visa, it's actually a very cool visa because a foreigner can come in and decide to buy any business. As long as it's a legal business, that's it. And then that foreigner can also start one from scratch. So let's say you have a client that says, hey, Anthony, I want to stay in the United States and I'm thinking of, opening up, or let's see what business I like. I like animals, I like puppies. Okay, and cats too, especially cats. I'm thinking of opening up a grooming place. Can you help me? And you said, sure, do you want to buy an existing one? And they said, no, I want to start it from scratch. Fine. So then you help them find a location within a shopping plaza. So you help, negotiate the lease, we review it. It's a nice location. I always recommend for commercial leases, shorter term with options to renew and a cap on the increase of rent for the options to renew. the way you put the client in the driver's seat. So you negotiate a nice location, 3-year lease with 3 options to renew of 3 years each, and a cap on the increase of rent. Client is happy. So now the client goes and has to get the licenses and permits to have a grooming place. So they go, they get the license, the permits for the grooming place. They set up their website. They have the 5-year projections, how their business is going to do. For the E2 visa, 1 or 2 employees is okay, full-time, part-time, it works. They're not picky on that, but they want to see a couple of jobs. So the client does all of this, the business plan is done, he did the investment. In a period of a month, he's able to apply for an E2 visa. And that's it, he's happy. Let's say he's from Colombia. So now we send them to the US Embassy in Colombia for the interview. In the interview, they say, yay, we like your business, here it is, 5-year visa. Usually with the E2 visa, the term or the time of the visa, it's going to be 5 years, depending on the country that you're from. And that's it. So it's not, I don't want to say it's a simple process because nothing with immigration is simple, but we've done this so many times, both the immigration part and the business part, that if a client is from a treaty country and they tell you they want to be able to reside here legally, live here legally, the E2 visa might be something really feasible for them. We don't care that you don't have a business abroad. 2 jobs created here are good, and you, your spouse, and your children under 21 will get to legally live here. Your kids can go to school, university, your spouse can work wherever he or she wants, and you, the investor, just have to direct the business. And as long as the business is going forward, you can keep on basically renewing. Every 5 years, you keep on renewing. So it's really a cool visa to have. So additional requirements, the capital must be subject to loss if investment fails. That is why we don't allow loans secured in the business. But it could be, as long as you invested your money, you're good, 100, 150, depending on what type of business it is. The treaty investor, this is important, must prove the funds were not obtained from criminal activity. So no, we don't want people obtaining the funds from, criminal activity. How do we show that? I ask them for their tax returns of their country. I ask them for their bank statements of their country for them to tell me, how did you get the money? Oh, Romy, I got it because I worked. Fabulous. Show me your tax return. Oh, Romy, I got it because it was an inheritance. Okay, great. Show me that. Who did you inherit from? Or it's a gift. Fabulous. Let's do a gift affidavit. Where did those people get the funds? Oh, Romy, I had an apartment in Miami Beach that I refinanced and cashed out. Great. Let's show those papers. So whatever it is that they got the money, we just need to show where they got the money. Okay, that's it. We have to show it's not from criminal activity. They don't want any little devils here. Investment enterprise cannot be marginal. It must possess the potential to generate more than enough to provide for the living expenses of the investor. So immigration is not going to give you a visa just for you to have a fabulous life here with your family. It doesn't work that way. They want to show that you are actually helping the economy. And how do we show that? By creating jobs. That is key here. And depending on the type of business, 1 or 2 jobs should be enough, okay? So 1 or 2 jobs from the US, could be full-time, part-time, they should be able to obtain the visa. Let's see, I think I have more questions. Veronica's asking me, can you repeat the financing requirement? No loans to purchase the business allowed, must fund with your own funds. Okay. For the E2 visa, you cannot obtain loans secured on the business. For those of you that are familiar with SBA loans, for example, or any business loans, whenever anybody gives you money for your business, they will secure it on the business assets. They will file something called a UCC, which will say that all of the assets of the business are encumbered by whoever is your lender. We cannot have that for immigration purposes, okay? Also, no seller finance, because that's still a loan secured on the business. We cannot have that. What you could have is a gift. Somebody loves you, wants to give you a gift of money. No problem. I do a lot of gifts from parents to their kids. They have a kid that's like 23 years old. They want him to stay here. He doesn't have the funds. So the parent gives him a gift of $150,000. No problem. It could also be a loan secured on the person's own assets. So let's say the father doesn't want to give them the money, but he wants to lend them the money. That's fine too, as long as it's not secured on the assets of the business, only on the person. Also, a lot of people have property that they have bought and they don't want to sell it to, use that money for the investment. Well, they can do refinance, cash out. They can refinance their apartment in Miami Beach, get the money from there, and then use it for the business. Okay, so all those things are allowed. Somebody else is asking me, Juan, if a person has been here with a job visa, but they started a company, can they do a change of status for an E2 or one of the other ones without leaving the US? Yes. As long as they're here legally, right, with status, we can do a change of status to the E2. And actually, that's an interesting question because that happens to me a lot. So I have foreigners that have, are studying here on a F1 visa, and they started a company and they hired people to run that company. Of course, they're not working for the company because that's not allowed on their student visa, but they hire people that are working on the company, and we just do the change of status from F1 to E2. So now they can work for their own company. No problem, that's allowed. I have also clients here that are here on an H-1B visa, which is, employment visa. And they're like, I want to start my own company, or I started my own company and I hire employees and I want to stay here and work for my company. Yes, you can do a change of status also. So there is no restriction as long as you're here legally. For those of you that are here on a B1, B2 visa, also you can do change of status. Those that cannot do change of status are the ones that come here with a visa waiver, because that's not a visa. Those that come here for like 3 months, that's not a visa, so you cannot do change of status, okay? All right, let's see, another question. In this case, they have been here with an H-1B visa, no problem. We can do an E-2 visa. We make sure, we have to work with the timeline, right? To make sure that everything gets done and they do the change of status to an E-2 visa for themselves and for their spouse and their children. So somebody get the E-2 visa for usually 2 to 5 years at a time. It depends, and there's no limit on the number of extensions, okay? I have clients that have been here for 20, 30 years. Of course, I didn't do the original E-2 visa, but I'm doing the renewals. As long as the business is going forward, then you're able to renew your E-2 visa. Now, questions, right? How do I convert my E-2 visa to a green card? Well, there's a couple of ways. One is if we do an EB-5. So let's say that you have a client that right now only has, $300,000. Okay, the $300,000, they get their E-2 visa for 5 years, right? They created 2 full-time jobs. Great. Eventually, their business starts doing well and they keep on investing. And let's say there is an area, rural or low employment, so the required amount is $800,000. So once they've invested that $800,000, we can apply for the EB-5, right? And then eventually they can create more jobs to get to the 10-job minimum, right? And I'll explain that in a minute, but you can go from E2 to EB-5 if you invest the required amount. Also, let's say that a couple came in, so the E2 visa investor and the spouse. And the spouse went to work, let's say, for my law firm, and she's doing a fabulous job. She's an attorney in her country, but then here she's working as a legal assistant paralegal. So I think she's doing great. And now I want to do a perm, right? I want to help her stay here legally. So then I petition her as an employer. That takes around 2 years, but now she can be here legally with her perm. That can work too. Let's see, and that can apply for any business. For you to do a perm, basically a labor certification for somebody, it doesn't have to be a huge company. It could be a small company, as long as they have the ability to pay. Let's see, what else do we have? So you can switch because you apply for an EB-5. You can switch because you got a permanent offer of employment and you can become a resident that way. If you're single, you can also become a resident because you got married. So there's many different options depending on the particular situation. Somebody's asking for my information. Yes, I'm gonna send everybody a follow-up email, but I'm also going to put it here in the chat. So I'm very active on social media. You guys can find me on Instagram with Romy Jurado, and I answer that. My email for everybody to have it, it's romy@juradolawfirm.com. And then my phone number is 305-921-0976. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, feel free to do it there. I put it in the chat, and I'll also send everybody a follow-up email. 1 second. Okay, so E2 visa, it's really a great visa. Again, we have to have the person be of a treaty country. They have to understand, they have to invest the money. It cannot come from criminal funds. And they just simply have to apply and comply with everything that immigration wants. And we will walk them through it, whether it's starting a new business or buying an existing one. And then that's it. They're able to stay here. Their kids can go to school here. Big tip for anybody that's watching. If you're here on a visitor's visa, please don't put your kids in school. You are not allowed to put your kids in school unless you're here to stay with one of these visas or another visa that gives you that right. I have heard of people, not my clients, but I have heard of people whose visitor's visa has been canceled because they put their kids in school. So don't put your kids in school, in public school, that is. If you want to put them in private school, then you need to do a student visa, which we can help with also. But I wouldn't want to risk somebody's visa because they put their kids in school. So be careful with that. All right, now we're going to talk about the EB-5 visa. The EB-5 visa is an immigrant visa. Basically, it allows you to come here, reside here, you and your family, and straight out residency. Let me see, hold on. There's two ways to do an EB-5 visa. One is the direct way, and in another way is the regional center way. The direct way works very much like the other types. Basically, the foreigner sets up a US company, right? They invest the 800,000 or the $1,050,000, depending on where the business is. We apply, okay? They set up the whole business, bank account, business location, all of that. Maybe they hire 2 people, we apply. They get the conditional residency for 2 years. And then we have those 2 years to show that we've created the 10 full-time jobs. The investor has to be active in the business, right? That's the direct EB-5. They're always in control of their funds, so they need to manage them appropriately. Then we have the regional center way. Regional centers are private institutions, they're not the government, that have received a qualification from immigration to receive foreign investor funds and to give those funds to different projects, okay? We work, our job is to make sure that the regional center is actually approved. So in my follow-up email, you will see that I'll send you a link to all the regional centers that have lost their accreditation. So the regional center will receive the foreign investment fund and give it to the projects. What projects? People building buildings, people building bridges, people building everything, okay? Projects that work with that particular regional center. The advantage of the regional center is that most of the time the investment amount is less. It's around 800,000. Now they will charge what they call an administrative fee, and I've seen it between 50 to 80,000. And the other advantage is that the investor doesn't have to be involved in the business. The regional center can be in Texas, and you can live here in Miami. And you also don't have to worry about the job creation because the regional center has a direct, indirect formula, and they deal with all of that. All right, so let me keep on answering questions. Our time is almost coming to an end. Let's see. A newspaper in Colombia said Florida law will forbid foreigners to own property with 3 miles of the ocean. Have you heard of this? Okay, so there are new restrictions, all right, that are coming into place July 1st for foreign investors. It doesn't apply to all foreign investors. It only applies to people of particular countries, okay? And I'm working on a class to talk about that, but let me see if I can give you, I don't know about the ocean, but it's a whole bill and the regulations, because it applies, for example, to Venezuelan people, it applies to, so the restrictions are for China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria. Okay, so those countries, if you have people that are from those countries, they're going to be restricted in certain purchases in the state of Florida. The law is very comprehensive and the restrictions apply depending on which country you're from. If you have any specific questions regarding that, please reach out to me personally and I will do my best to assist you. I will be working on creating another class about that because the regulations have just come about. I think they're going to be effective July 1st. And the forms to register and all of this are not available, so I don't have much information and don't want to confuse you. But please reach out and it will be my pleasure to assist you. All right, but for sure the restrictions don't apply to Colombia, so don't worry about that. Investment requirements. Usually it's going to be a minimum of $1,050,000. However, for the EB-5 visa, if it's an area of low employment or a rural area, then the investment comes down to $800,000, okay? The money can be a loan. Here, we don't have a problem. You can obtain a loan to do this. I have a lot of clients that are borrowing money to do EB-5s, no problem. The job creation, if you're doing direct EB-5, is 10 full-time jobs working at least 35 hours per week. This job creation is not at the beginning to apply if you're doing direct EB-5, it's after you obtain your conditional residency. In order to remove those conditions, we have to show that you created the jobs. So this is not right now, it's later. What is a rural area? Anything that's not a city. any area outside a metropolitan statistical area or outside the boundary of any city or town having a population of 20,000 or more. 90% of the US is a rural area. What is an area of high unemployment? It's an area experiencing unemployment of at least 150% of the national average. So if you find an area like that and you put your business there, then the investment amount is going to be 100,000. So the way that it works is we'll apply for EB-5, then you will get what it's a 2-year conditional green card, right? So during those 2 years conditional green card is when we need to remove the conditions to show that you've created by showing that you've created a 10 full-time jobs. If you're able to show that, then we can remove the conditions. Now you have a permanent green card and you can just proceed and then eventually become a US citizen, which I recommend everybody does. All right, well, that's the end of my presentation. That's my contact information there. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. It has been a real pleasure to talk to you guys today, and I hope that you see me as a resource in the area, of course, of immigration, but also in probate, in real estate. We also do litigation. We also do trademarks, copyrights. I have a really nice team of fabulous attorneys, paralegals, legal assistants, and law clerks, and we really look forward to working with each and one of your clients and yourselves in the best way we can. Thank you so much. Have a nice week, everybody. Bye.